I do want to introduce Jackson Howard, who's also been with us over many years. He's the regional coordinator for EURAXESS North America, overseeing initiatives in both Canada and the United States. His role, Jackson, is dedicated to fostering scientific collaboration between Europe and North America, providing researchers with valuable information on career opportunities within the European research area. He actively promotes funding and fellowship opportunities through the Marie Curie Actions and the European Research Council. Jackson, if you are with us, you have the floor. Thank you for waiting patiently. I know as a father, it's difficult to be in the office at this late hour. Jackson?
Thank you so much, Theo, for the kind introduction. I think what I'll do is, please interrupt me if there's any technical issues, if my audio cuts out, there's any issues with screen sharing, but what I will do is I will jump right in. One quick thing on the, pardon me here.
Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Anna.
And you can see me full screen, is that right,
Yes,
Theo?
we can.
Okay, great. So I think the way I can add a little bit of extra value here is I think I can sort of power through this presentation and give an express version in the sense that I give variations of a similar talk sort of all year round, all around the United States and Canada, as you mentioned, Theodore. So what I can do is try to give a fast overview and then invite everyone to both peruse our website, EURAXESS, be in touch with all of the official European Commission resources, both online and offline, and then just be in touch with us when you have questions. So I think a lot of the times when I talk to diaspora networks, it's a labor of love, and people are, they're volunteering their time, or they're not necessarily paid a salary for all the time and effort they're putting in. Whereas sort of the way this whole project works is we're EU funded, and it's our job. I mean, this is my 9 to 5 to try to make Europe more accessible as a research and collaboration destination at all degree levels, basically PhD and up, and in every sense of the word. So for those who are professors here in the US, who I'm hearing a lot from today, I'll talk about ways you can bring Romanians and all Europeans to your institutions in an EU funded manner, and vice versa, how you can send your research community or yourself perhaps start a lab in Europe at the institution of your choice with some funds offered by the European Commission. So I think I'll give a general overview. Maybe what you'll do after hearing from me is learn about which scheme you want to delve into a bit more deeply, and from there you can check out the resources from them. But I think also the speaking order meshes really well, because for the last 2 or 3 speakers before me, we've heard a lot about mobility and how it benefits one's career development, and that's probably the lion's share of what we talk about. So I will introduce EURAXESS services. Again, I represent one of the two-person team in Washington, D.C., and we're always accessible here to you, so you'll get my contact information at the very end. And then outside of the context of EURAXESS, our main mandate is to promote Horizon Europe. So if you haven't already heard of it, Horizon Europe is the 7-year framework program for research innovation that the EU runs. So I'll have some visuals here, and if you scan that QR code, actually let me go back very quickly. If you scan this QR code here on your screen, it'll take you to a web post that I have that basically will let you download a PDF version of this presentation. You can refer to it after the fact. So thank you again. As EURAXESS, within every European country, there's actually 600 what they call service centers, providing regional expertise and national expertise, and then thematic expertise. So if you were to say, I'm Romanian American, or I want to send my students to Romania, and specifically in this field within STEM, there would be a small number of offices out of that 600 that can actually provide very specific information. However, my colleague Barry and I are your local representatives who are happy to connect you further in and every way. When we're talking about Europe, we're not just talking about Romania and the 26 other EU member states. We're actually talking about approximately 15 additional countries that pay into the budget and then get access to funding at an EU level, because they've essentially joined the program. So I want you to keep this in mind for those of you that have colleagues and partners in Canada. And then also for certain funding schemes, any country in the world that is not part of this EU program, but is considered lower middle income, will receive funding for successful international consortia. So there's a lot of different ways we can be in touch, whether it's talking about money for you, for mobility, or for you to stay put. But my job is to help make that easier to access. And of course, we're not third-party consultants or anything like that. EURAXESS is an official project of the European Commission. So please do grab our contact information at the end and be in touch with any and all questions. So this will just be a quick overview of the website so that you can navigate on your own. If you go to northamerica.euraxess.org, and I'll paste a link as soon as I wrap up to all of our different social media channels and website in the chat. The jobs and funding and partnering and hosting portals are essentially 4 different categories of the exact same tool on the exact same website. When we say jobs, it's in and out of academia, it's in and out of Europe. So your American institution, you could post vacancies, whether it's yourself directly in your office, or you can just pass this on to the sort of HR equivalent departments in your faculty or your institution, so that they can post. It's all moderated by humans to cut down on spam and scammy material. And that said, it's completely free and accessible. The same dynamic goes for funding. So if it's a bottom-up funding scheme and you want to bring awareness to that, or search for yourself in your community, you can search there, and you can also filter by your career stage, country, things like that. The partnering tool will help you find other colleagues around the world to possibly partner with in all senses of the word. And then hosting, I think the majority of my presentation will be on some of these bottom-up funding schemes that allow you as the individual researcher to apply for mobility. But you need to have a letter of support from a host institute that basically says, yes, when this person is successful, we will receive them and host them at our institution. And this is where you can find, not exactly matchmaking, but it's sort of like a job vacancy posting board for institutions that are aware of these EU schemes, and they want you to apply to eventually end up being hosted by them. There's a lot of career development tools. Some are interactive, some are more static, but during COVID, this was one of the main ways the EURAXESS Europe project I was able to really engage with researchers. So I'll just suggest that you sort of add that to your overall toolbox of resources available to you. And like I said before, there's over 600 service centers throughout Europe, but then there's 9 what we call hubs outside of Europe on the EURAXESS worldwide side of the project. So you can see here in parentheses what these are. Some are country specific, some are continental. My colleague and I were local to you, Theo, here in Washington, but we cover all of Canada and the US alike. So towards the end, you'll hear my appeal to partner in either direction. So if I can help you, or if you can help us, as long as the overall box being checked is that we're helping Europe through collaboration, through mobility, whatever the case may be, I want to talk and I want to see how we can chat further and make things happen. So I mentioned those 5 main sections. You can see this horizontal blue strip here. When you're navigating the website on your own, this will be sort of what you're looking at. I just filtered filtered for Romania, and out of 8 to 10,000 opportunities, it whittled down to a very manageable number. So for those interested in connecting further, maybe finding an opportunity for yourself in Romania or for anyone within the community, you can point them to this resource. I mean, the URL, as soon as you do any sort of filter search, will update live. So you can literally copy and paste that email, send it along, copy paste that link, and send that URL along to anyone you'd like in an email. What I mentioned before, we're talking about 45 countries. Here's a quick sort of shortcut. With the exception of Switzerland, which was associated in past programs, the countries you see here are either EU member states or associated countries that pay into the program and become a part of it. They have a seat at the table, so to say, and they help define these 7-year programs. So the door is open to all of Europe. It's really obvious here. And like I said, Canada joined earlier this year and New Zealand joined last summer. So there's also some thinking outside the box, outside of the typical regional neighborhood of Europe with whom to partner and possibly have those colleagues receive funding as well. So when it comes to Romania specifically, I think you already have the built-in community here. It is members of IRF and all the great institutions present. But EURAXESS Romania, if you just type that into your favorite search engine, that will be the first result that comes up. We'll have expertise on these 18 different areas across every European country. They're standardized into 3 categories, 18 different topics. So if you are talking to someone that's a bit newer to the possibility, even if they're moving from a neighboring country, I'll take a quick step back to talk about 20 years ago. The whole purpose of EURAXESS was to help European mobility within Europe. It's been very successful, and now the aim has expanded to sort of anything and everything. It's about attracting people of all nationalities to Europe and helping Europeans get funding to go, let's say, abroad, outside of Europe, to the country of their choice, in some limited mobility schemes. So this is a resource I would want you to point people to in your sort of work promoting Romania in any sense of the word. If you scan this QR code or you wait for the link that I'll share in the chat momentarily, you'll find a sign-up link to what we call our flash notes. We ask a lot of questions during sign-up. The only thing required is just name and email, and you can unsubscribe anytime, scrolling to the bottom, clicking, I think, 2 clicks away from unsubscribing, so we won't spam you. But what we typically do is send twice a month emails with a small spattering of events, whether it's in person or virtual, whether it's in North America and sometimes in Europe if they're EU run in particular, research-related news, innovation-related news, and then also individual specific funding opportunities, whether they're hyper specific, like an opportunity in biology in Romania, or if it's just general funding for the institution, for the field of your choice, in the institution of your choice. We'll include anything and everything there. And we'll also do video recording. So I think, Theo, in a couple days or weeks' time, I'll be sure to point to this in one of the following emails. So I would say it's really low-hanging fruit. Pop your name and email in there, and then you can spend a couple minutes every month scrolling and seeing what might be relevant to you. And of course, if we can promote something of yours, like a lot of these heritage scholarships that we're talking about, other opportunities, we're 2 people, we can't be aware of everything. So sometimes we rely on experts like you to let us know. If there's some European component, we'll find a way to include it for our wider audience. So please do, and thank you so much. Here's just an example. If we point to our website, you'll see that top strip will just be sort of different types of news, and then the bottom will be events. So this was screenshots taken a couple weeks ago, and you can see we were well prepared to promote this event to the wider public.
Thank you.
And with that, I think I don't know how many people we got, but I'm glad to be among some great people here. And I think what I'll do here is really quickly try to go through and just talk about Horizon Europe. Again, this is about laying breadcrumbs because everything else will be accessible afterwards, both on recorded hour-long info sessions on our YouTube channel, and then also official EU websites and things like that. So the EU defines its R&I program on a 7-year basis. They release in smaller batches of 2 to 3 years what they call work programs. But Horizon Europe is this current program that we're basically smack dab in the middle of. It runs from the beginning of 2021 through the end of 2027, so we're approaching the final 3 years. And there's, if you've ever attended an info session on Horizon Europe, or you search online and you look for sort of infographics or quick visual layouts, this is the famous graphic. This basically explains, for our purposes, the most important parts will be pillars 1 and 2. So I just want you to, if you take 1 or 2 things out of my presentation, I want it to be what pillars 1 and 2 are. So you can think of pillar 1 in these top 2 schemes that I'll be talking about is, for the most part, bottom-up funding for individual researchers, where that individual researcher, I'll say you or your students or the researchers under you, apply for funding with a letter of support from a host institute. Like I mentioned, that host institute doesn't have to be on the EURAXESS portal. You can contact any institution, including you as being based at American schools, can host Europeans on that second scheme there, Marie Sklodowska Curie Actions. But the ones that are very well aware of Horizon Europe and its predecessors will post their offers and interest in hosting on that portal. So they're bottom up, they're all domains and fields, so there's no predetermined categories. I love this because oftentimes I'm presenting only to STEM specific fields or social sciences and humanities fields, and I get to promote these evenly to everyone. So I'm quite confident that regardless of what you're doing, even if you're in industry, you can host researchers or STEM researchers. So please, I'll spend a few minutes talking about those, but the takeaway would be that pillar 1 of Horizon Europe is, for the most part, funding for individual researchers for their own project proposals. You're not writing in why you think XYZ is defined by the EU, why you can meet those goals. You're writing everything from scratch and having a lot of freedom and flexibility to say what you want. And if you're successful, you'll be able to do that. Pillar 2 would be, you could almost argue the opposite. It's open calls that are top down, meaning the European Commission and those 45 plus countries that I mentioned before have defined societal problems, global problems, and a bit of what the problem is, what should be done. And then you, as a consortium of principal investigators, will submit your proposal for how you will tackle that challenge under research. It's divided into 6 somewhat cross-cutting clusters. I will mention that within those 45 plus countries I mentioned earlier, of course, all of this, everything that I mentioned here is funded. For US-based principal investigators, your own individual nationality doesn't matter. If you're in the US, if you're in Canada, the nationality of your institution, let's say, is what matters here. So because Canada just associated to Horizon Europe, all of Pillar 2 is funded. That's excellent. If you're based in the US, because of historical agreements where the NSF or NIH will support, international researchers and help, the health cluster will be funded. So if you're a US-based PI, you can join a team of Europeans and other international researchers. And if your project proposal is successful, you would be funded as a US-based PI in health. In all of the others, you would be providing your own funding or arguing why your participation is a third country representative is necessary. And in some cases, that could be successful. Over 7 years, this is 95.5 billion euro, converts to about 100 billion US dollars. So there's quite a lot of money. Divide that by 7, you'll get what the annual amount of money is, and it's nothing to bulk. It's the world's biggest ever research program. So I've already mentioned Pillar 1. I'll leave these slides in the PDF so that when you're scrolling through and skimming them, it'll come back to you. I would say if you're interested in hosting someone on a Marie Curie fellowship, keep in mind that those Europeans are the ones writing. If you want them to come to ERC in the US, they need to find you. So please register for a free account in your EURAXESS portal and submit, add yourself to that hosting portal so they can find you, be in touch, and then apply to the EU saying that they want to be supervised by you. And again, there's no limitations to nationalities or domains. So again, to very quickly go through this, Marie Sklodowska Curie Actions, or Marie Curie for its historical name, I'll go into what these 5 different actions are, and I'll just say in the interest of time, it starts at the doctoral level. So they have doctoral programs for in and out of academia. The most popular scheme within all of these is postdoctoral fellowships. So 1 to 2 years for a person of any nationality to go to Europe. This includes moving within Europe. So you can go from Portugal to Spain, Romania to Ireland, doesn't really matter. But a person of any nationality could, let's say, go from the US to Romania, and then you at US and Canadian institutions could host Romanians for 1 to 2 years. If they're going from Europe to North America, let's say, there's a mandatory 1-year return phase to Europe. So they also need to have that European hosted in mind. But the whole purpose of this is mobility, so that someone gets excellent postdoctoral training, going to a new country and going to a new institution. There's also things like staff exchanges. If you have potential interest in this, please reach out. We have dedicated info sessions we've recorded on multiple schemes of these, but I think I'll just cut through. If you divide by 7, it's over $1 billion per year. It's smaller within the grander scheme of Horizon Europe, but I think it's quite impressive for what it is. And the US is one of the top destinations outside of Europe. So I think I'll more or less leave it at that. The eligibility window is 0 to 8 years post PhD. If someone within your community is really on that 8-year cutoff line, they're not sure where they fall, let's be in touch. We can talk about certain things that might push them on either side. There's a mobility rule, so you basically can't game the system and end up where you already live just by hopping a border for a day or two. But these are extremely competitive. When let's say someone is successful, they come to the US, they get access to the Marie Curie Alumni Association for the rest of their life, which is really great for career development. And this is also a very good window into getting more involved in Horizon Europe. Marie Sklodowska Curie Actions are sort of seen as a stepping stone to have your institution get more involved. So again, I'll leave these slides in. These visuals will give an idea for which directions people can go in. I'll leave you with the impression that it's very open, as you can see. This is the current year's call calendar. You can see almost all these calls have closed, but these plus or minus a week are on the same basis every single year. So you can imagine what the 2025 call calendar will look like. And if you're interested in hosting or sending your researchers on the postdoctoral fellowship, look at this year's early April opening date. You can start your research now in January, February, so that they can be well prepared when it opens in April and apply before the deadline. The other scheme within the Pillar 1 mobility are European Research Council grants. I can talk about this one really quick because the single slide does it all. You can see how many years post-PhD you are, which scheme you would basically fall under. So it starts with the starting grant, goes up to consolidator, then advanced grants, and all of these are to go to any one of those countries you saw on that list earlier. The EU member states, the associated countries, and Switzerland, because they've made a specific bilateral agreement. One exception to this is that for the synergy grants, you could be the one member out of a 2 to 4 person team who remains in the US and still be funded, because the whole purpose there is a small consortium of PIs. So you would be funded as the US-based PI and that list of 2 to 4 researchers. You can see here, you only need to spend half of your time in Europe. You can obviously spend all of it, but if you want to keep dual appointment, if your US institution lets you, that's an option. And the further up you go, or the further along you go in this order, the amount of time that's spent on the project goes down. So keep all of these in mind. They're extremely competitive. But that said, we're here to help you, and we sometimes have webinars with former evaluators, with former grantees, so we can do everything we can to try to prepare you for success in this. There's additional funding for the move to Europe, so this doesn't get presented when our European colleagues are giving this talk within Europe, because that's a bit irrelevant. But if you be moving from the US to Romania or any country of your choice, there would be some additional funding that comes from there. And again, you can keep dual affiliation if your current institution will let you. And also you can hire team members. So you would be leading the lab, and it's bottom up. You're saying what the proposal should be for your project, what you want to carry out, but the funding allows you to hire team members anywhere in the world. There's a lot of testimonials. The ERC itself, the ERC executive agency of the EU, makes an extremely useful what they call playlist on YouTube of basically how-tos. And then also within every single European country, including Romania, you will have what they call national contact points, both for ERC and then for everything. I've already mentioned the Marie Curie fellowships, Pillar 2. Any question you have that I can't answer is EURAXESS North America, along with my colleague. We'll get you in touch with those Romanian NCPs who will be able to. If you're interested in ERC, you don't necessarily want to start your own project. They have something called implementing arrangements. If you're a current NSF awardee, you can join research visits with ERC supported teams. So you don't have to go and apply necessarily to the immediate scheme that I'm pointing you to. There's a lot of sort of secondary additional opportunities for you there. When you access the PDF, this link here at the very bottom, CFM guide, will be clickable, and you can read more into that. I think I've already mentioned Pillar 2, so I can skip this slide. But again, in the US, we're considered a high-income third country. So if you're interested in joining a team of European PIs, other international PIs, you would only automatically be funded under a successful proposal if it's in that health cluster. All the other clusters, you would either bring your own external funding, or you would argue why the whole consortium would argue why your participation is absolutely necessary to the project. There is a way on what's called the EU funding and tenders portal, where any of these calls are listed, to search by a filter specifically for calls that flag international cooperation as specifically relevant. And that might help you take a very large number of open calls and whittle it down to a more manageable number under Pillar 2 of calls where they're more likely to want third-party participants and fund them. But don't limit yourself. You can always make the case why your whole consortium should be able to include EU funding for you based in the US, even if you're not in the health cluster. And there's a 3-page guide under this link, again, which will be clickable. It says probably better than I can why you should get involved in any and all pillars of Horizon Europe. I leave you with this just to show the percentages under Pillar 2 for each cluster of calls that have international cooperation is encouraged. You can see it's a minority for all of them. But that said, out of the hundreds of calls that are released at any given point, I think this is something to work with. So just keep all this in mind. You'll see the help clusters, I think the smallest, but it's US-based PIs, that doesn't matter because all of them would be funded. This clickable link will be the long URL that takes you to the funding intended portal itself. This is a bit of the visuals for what it looks like when you're looking up calls. Cordis is a website where you can find all information on all past funded projects. The website itself, I think, is celebrating 30 years, and it goes back to even earlier framework programs. You could, in the organization country, filter only for Romania and the US and see projects that have had partners from both countries just to sort of whittle down and get more of an idea. But again, in the interest of time, I think I'll just start to wrap up here. We have country-specific pages that we've gathered as EURAXESS North America. The screenshot doesn't do justice because you really have to squint here, but this is where I'm getting some inspiration from hearing everyone today about things I could include about cultural and scholarship opportunities for Romania. So I will make sure that I share with Teo a link to this, and you can add your feedback for things we can expand. For example, here was that embedded video that you can't do anything with now. But when you visit the website, it's a link for Romanian universities that pitch themselves as host institutes for the Marie Curie postdoctoral fellowship program. So all of the websites I've mentioned that are official EU resources, they'll all be clickable resources here. There are some very short-term funding programs, some of which are not open currently, but I'll leave this in the PDF for you to digest and see at some points if you might be able to receive Romanians for 3 to 6 months on EU-funded programs. Some of those schemes are left here. And I also want to just quickly, as I'm going to go through the slides as I share this, these are country-specific slides that I often end with when I'm giving presentations because it's very easy for me to gather this data and just say, hey, here are the embassy resources for you, here are consular resources, here are diaspora networks. Why don't I add a Romania page? I don't have one. I haven't made one. It's time-consuming to make any and all of these. So I think I'm very motivated by everything I've learned today. And after this, give me a couple weeks after the holidays and into the new year. I think I'll work with Teo. I'll perhaps work with any of you that reach me. We can get a couple bullet points that for most future presentations, I spend 2 minutes on this section saying, hey, show of hands, who's interested in Germany? A lot of people raise their hands and then they know where to go next. Whether or not they would think to be interested in Romania, I think if we have a slide, we can pique their interest a little bit more. So here's a sort of a sneak peek into the 5 or 6 countries that just by popular demand, I always include. I would love your input, whether it's in the chat now or by email later, on what we can do to point people interested in Romania for the next steps. So to wrap up, thank you for letting me go long. I can now see why everyone's ready to wrap up the day. We are always traveling to the US and Canada for presentations, for conferences, whether it's to present on Horizon Europe, on EURAXESS services, and to learn from others. How can we support you? It's our job. We're an EU project. So for any of these countries that I've mentioned, our job is to make them more attractive, make them presentable. So if you have feedback on things you would like us to attend, we can see if I happen to be attending that conference, I can do my fair share to shine a light on Romania, and vice versa. If you would be interested in having me speak, whether quite similar to what I'm doing now or more hyper-specific on some subtopic, it's our job. So I'm obviously paid to do this. Please let me know what we can do. It looks like you're very interestingly spread geographically throughout the entire continent. So if there's ever any overlap, whether it's the ability to grab a coffee or more formally join something you're doing, I'm always happy to serve as a speaker, perhaps be a third party, help identify a speaker if you need someone from the EU level or anything like that. So let's be in touch. I really, we have a broad mandate and the ability to think creatively on how to do it. So I'll leave you here with a QR code to sign up for our emails. Again, twice monthly, so low commitment. You can unsubscribe anytime. Again, I'm Jackson. My colleague Daria and I are at your service. This shared email address gets you to both of us, and then of course we'll reply directly from our individual work email addresses. And if you search EURAXESS North America on any of the social media channels, you'll find everything, including a lot of scheme-specific info sessions on our YouTube channel over this last year. So thank you for letting me go a little bit long tail. I hope everyone's ready for
thank you,
a
Jackson,
nice weekend
for powering
day 2
through
tomorrow.
so fast. I know you do have the exercise to do it, but you've done this specifically for us, and everything that you said that applied to Romania applies to the Republic of Moldova as well. For since we had the representative from the Republic of Moldova as well, it applies to the Moldovan academic diaspora. Thank you.